Prabhu. We are very, very honored, Prabhu, that you accepted our, invitation to come to Parsati Foundation. It's always good fortune to hear from, Vaishnavas. So without much ado, we will start with the session. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Warm welcome once again, Srinath Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. I wouldn't go anywhere close to lotus mouths. But we'll get started. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyamadi Paschatya Deshutarine. Okay, we completed text 1. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, good. Okay, so we've completed text 1 in the Nectar of Instruction. So text 1, Rupa Goswami spoke about the 6 kinds of urges that we might have, and that we should control these 6 urges, right? This is Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jihva Vegam, Udaropastha Vegam. And Etan Veganyo Vishahedadira, one who is control these 6 urges can Sarvam Apimam Prithvim Sisishat, is eligible to make disciples all over the world, Rupa Goswami said. So in text 2, Rupa Goswami will talk about the 6 things that will not help us control the urges that he spoke about in text 1. And in text 3, he'll talk about the 6 things that will help us control the urges that he mentioned in text 1. Especially these text 2 and text 3 of Upadeshamrita, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written 12 essays, one for each of these items that Rupa Goswami mentions, the 6 items that destroys bhakti and the 6 items that flourishes bhakti, basically. So this in his essay is called the Bhakti Aloka. So we can see how important these 12 items are put together for our progress in devotional service. So we'll start with text 2. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyamcha Shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. The translation. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. 1. eating more than necessary, or collecting more funds than required. This is atyahara. Over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. This is prayasa. Talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. This is prajalpa. Practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. So this is niyamagraha. So this niyamagraha can be split into two, niyama agraha and niyama agraha. So that's why in the translation we have two translations for the same word. So the first one is following rules for the sake of following rules is niyama agraha, and rejecting the rules is niyama agraha. And the fifth one is associating with worldly minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. This is jana sangha. And the sixth thing is being greedy for mundane achievements. This is laulyam. This is greed. So these are the six things that Rupa Goswami says when we become too entangled in these six things, our bhakti is spoiled. Bhaktir vinashyati. Devotional service is completely spoiled. So like in text 1, Prabhupada's purports also have initially his comments, and then he goes into Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary, Anuvritti, and then he explains from that perspective. So today I'm going to try to see if we can get through Srila Prabhupada's comments, and next week Maharaj can illuminate us more on Prabhupada's comments on the Anuvritti, if I can get through this. Okay. So this is how Prabhupada starts the purport. Human life is meant for plain living and high thinking. So Prabhupada starts off with what human life is meant for. And throughout this section, Prabhupada will give us a very general perspective of atyahara. But he starts off from where we actually are and then goes from that perspective. So we'll read from Srila Prabhupada's purport, and then we'll try to discuss a little bit from that. Since all conditioned living beings are under the control of the Lord's third energy, this material world is designed so that one is obliged to work. So this is the situation in this material world, is that this is the third energy of the Lord, Prabhupada says. And the condition in this world is that all of us are obliged to work. We cannot not work in this world. So this was Arjuna's conundrum also in the Gita, is that he didn't want to fight, right? This is the entire conversation that's happening in the third chapter and the fifth chapter on how to actually work, how to perform our activity. So all of us in this material world are obliged to work. So there is no getting around that. But before Prabhupada goes in that train of thought, he gives us more information on the different energies of the Lord. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has three primary energies or potencies. The first is called Antaranga Shakti, or the internal potency. The second is called the Tatashta Shakti, or the marginal potency. The third is called Bahiranga Shakti, or the external potency. So right away, Prabhupada here, this is the first time I think in the Nectar of Instruction, Prabhupada is introducing the Lord's energies. He's spoken about Krishna, but here he also says that Krishna has his energies. This is a very, very important concept philosophically in our tradition, that this is the energy and the energetic, right? The Shakti Parimana, the transformation of the different energies of the Lord, and how this is constantly being spoken of in the commentaries of all the acharyas. This gives rise to the essential tattva of our sampradaya, which is the Achintya Beda tattva. And Jiva Goswami speaks so much on this. But this is a very important aspect of the entire philosophy itself, is that Krishna is a person and he has multiple energies. And these multiple energies are broadly classified as the internal potency, the marginal potency, and the external potency, all the energies that Krishna has. So we'll continue. The living entities constitute the marginal potency, and they are situated between the internal and external potencies. So this is us as the living entities. We are also the energy of Krishna, but we are the Tatastha Shakti, or the marginal potency of Krishna. Being subordinate as eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Jivatmas, or atomic living entities, must remain under the control of either the internal or external potency. So for us, we have two choices, but we have to pick one of the two. We have to take shelter of Krishna's energy. We can either take shelter of the internal potency of Krishna or the external potency of Krishna, but being the marginal potencies, there is no way out. We are not independent. So we have to take shelter of one of the potencies of Krishna. When they are under the control of the internal potency, they display their natural constitutional activity, namely the constant engagement in devotional service of the Lord. So this is our constitutional engagement or activity, Prabhupada says, is to perform devotional service, is to be constantly engaged in devotional service. But that is done under the control of the internal potency. So when the marginal potencies or the spirit souls are under the control of the internal potency of the Lord, then we are in our constitutional position. So Prabhupada gives a reference to this about the spirit souls, such Jivatmas, who are under the internal potency of the Lord. This is a famous verse from the Gita, also from the 9th chapter. Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritim ashrita bhajantyananya manaso jnatva bhutadim avyayam. Krishna says, O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So Prabhupada is now talking about the internal potency. He's giving us a little bit of an idea, and he'll go a little bit deeper about who the internal potency is. Sorry, in later in the purport. But here he's talking about one class of these marginal living entities who have taken shelter of the internal potency of the Lord. And later he'll return to the living entities who have taken shelter of the external energy. That's basically where all of these pushes come, and that's where all of these 6 items that Rupa Goswami is mentioning in this text come into the picture. So this is the Mahatma, he says. These living entities are Mahatmas, or great souls who have taken shelter of the internal potency of the Lord. And then he contrasts Mahatmas to Duratmas, or cripple-minded living entities, Prabhupada says. These Mahatmas, he says, are broad-minded, and the opposite of Mahatma, Prabhupada says, are Duratmas, who are cripple-minded. And how are these cripple-minded living entities, what are characterized? The cripple-minded living entities, Prabhupada says, are characterized by engaging their senses, engaging themselves in satisfying the senses, right? So here, the Mahatmas are engaged in satisfying Krishna in devotional service, but the rest of the living entities who have taken shelter of the external energy of Krishna are engaged in their own sense gratification. And that's where the 6 pushes comes also, right? How we dovetail those 6 pushes or urges for our sense urges that Rupa Goswami mentioned in text 1. And Prabhupada also makes this point that sometimes it's not just for sense gratification, right? We see people trying to work for a higher cause. This higher cause could be hey, I'm going to work for my community or my society or nation or even my own species, right? Like humanitarianism, I'll help everybody in the world. But the center of all of this is still the person's gratification. That's where it all expands from. So Prabhupada said that this may all be very good from a materialistic point of view, right? We may think that this person is doing such good work for his nation, for other human beings externally, but unfortunately they have no spiritual value because the basis of all such activity is still for his sense gratification, either for his own person or it's for his extended person or his family or nation, like that. So so the difference is, for a Mahatma, he's called a Mahatma only when he satisfies the senses of the Supreme Lord. And you have this famous verse also, right, from the definition of bhakti. This is from the Nectar of Devotion. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchite. That devotional service is serving all our senses and the master of the senses. So Prabhupada is talking about that here. And this miserliness or dhuratma or cripple-minded is also, we see that in the famous verse from the Gita, right? Arjuna, when he is giving all these reasons where he should not fight to Krishna, finally is not convinced by his own reasons, and he surrenders to Krishna in this by saying karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. He says karpanya dosho, that this karpanya means miserliness, right? This is the exact definition from that Prabhupada gives in the purport in Bhagavad Gita also of duratma, or what he gave for duratma in the purport in text 2, is that this miserliness is because we have this human form of life, and then we are wasting that human form of life in sense gratification. That's why Arjuna says, Karpanya dosha, I've been overcome by this miserliness, Krishna. And Prabhupada in his purport is also saying the exact same thing that Prabhupada says here in text 2. So, and then Prabhupada goes on to say that this Daivim Prakriti, this internal potency of Krishna, is manifested as Srimati Radharani, or her expansions, the Lakshmis, who are the goddesses of fortune, right? So these potencies also have their personal manifestations, and the manifestation of the internal potency of Krishna, Prabhupada says, is Srimati Radharani in the purport. Continuing. And now he comes back to our present state of why we have these tendencies for atyahara and prayasa. Right? Indeed, all living entities within this material world are under the control of Mahamaya, whose business is to subject them to the influence of threefold miseries. So this is the third energy that Prabhupada spoke about. He spoke about the internal potency, or he categorized that as the pleasure potency, which is Srimati Radharani. He spoke about the Tatashta Shakti, which is the living entities, and he classified them as Mahatmas and Dhuratmas, those who have taken shelter of the internal potency or those who have taken shelter of the external potency. And now Prabhupada is giving us an idea of the external potency, or Mahamaya, he calls it. And what's the business of this external potency is to subject them here is the living entities, to the influence of threefold miseries. And what are these threefold miseries? This is Adi Dhaivika Klesha, sufferings caused by the demigods, such as droughts, earthquakes, and storms. And we just perfectly know well what happened now recently with this huge virus also, right? Adi Bhautika Klesha, sufferings caused by the other living entities like insects or enemies or other living entities. And Adhyatmika Klesha, sufferings caused by one's own body and mind. So mental and physical infirmities that we might have. And Prabhupada says this is Daiva Bhutatma Hetavaha. The conditioned souls subjected to these three miseries by the control of the external energy suffer various difficulties. So this is the situation of the living entities who have taken shelter of the external energy of the Lord, which is the Mahamaya, right? It's not a very comfortable place to be because we're constantly being subjected to these threefold miseries. Klesha is miseries, and these three types of miseries. And this Daiva Bhutatma Hetavaha is from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the first canto, 10th chapter. This is Krishna returning to Krishna leaving Hastinapura. Right? This is the chapter that's describing that. And then this is also talking about Maharaj Yudhishthir's kingdom. Here, it basically says Daiva Bhutatma Hetavaha. So Hetava means miseries caused by, right? And Daiva is what we've just seen, these three classifications. Adi Daivika is Daiva. Bhuta means other living entities, and Atma means self. So Prabhupada is referring to this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he's saying that these, where in the Bhagavatam it says that in Maharaj Yudhishthir's kingdom, they were all the living entities, all the subjects that were part of his kingdom did not have any disturbances due to these three kinds of miseries. This was how Maharaj Yudhishthir's kingdom is. But we see that this is not the reality where we currently live in. We're constantly being subject to these three miseries. But what is the actual problem, right? Okay, this is just a symptom. We are here, and the symptom of us being, I wouldn't say symptom, the natural consequence of us being here is that we are undergoing these three sufferings. But Prabhupada says, but the main problem that's confronting all of us is birth, old age, disease, and death. It is because we are in the cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death that we are constantly being born. And then because we are born, we undergo all of these threefold miseries throughout our lives. So Prabhupada is getting to the root cause of why we have this problem. Right? Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshanu darshanam. This is Krishna also in the Gita that he says. Okay. And now Prabhupada establishes kind of the epistemology of why we are here and why this is happening to us. He gets into Atyahara, and we'll see how this connects to simple living and high thinking. Prabhupada will get to that point, but that's how it started. That's the theme of where he's getting at, that we should follow simple living and high thinking. And he's getting to an, I would say, I don't know, this ontological way of where we are and why we're undergoing all these sufferings, so that he can get to the point of why we have to have a simple living and high thinking. So Prabhupada starts off with Atyahara. He says, in the material world, one has to work for the maintenance of the body and soul. But how can one perform such work in a way that is favorable to the execution of Krishna consciousness? Everyone requires possessions such as food grains, clothing, money, and other things necessary for the maintenance of the body. But one should not collect more than necessary for his actual basic needs. If this natural principle is followed, there will be no difficulty in maintaining the body. So Prabhupada is emphasizing this point again that he made a little earlier, is that in this material world, we have to work for the maintenance of our body and soul. There is no way that we cannot work. But how can we perform this work in such a way that it is conducive for an execution of Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada is not saying we don't require anything, right? Prabhupada is saying, of course, we require food, clothing, and money, and all this for the necessity of maintaining our body. But we should not overdo it. This is Satyahara, right? Over-endeavoring or over-collecting. And we have to work in such a way that we have lots of time to engage in Krishna consciousness. That's the idea, right? We have to work, but pick our work in such a way that we can maintain our body. And at the same time, the main idea is to engage as much time as possible in self-realization or Krishna consciousness. And again, this is the same conversation that Krishna and Arjuna have in chapter 3 and chapter 5. right? Whether I should renounce my karma. This is karma sannyasa. Arjuna is asking. The beginning of the 5th chapter is, should I just renounce my work, or should I renounce the fruits of my action? And we've seen in the previous verse how we can do all of that to control the urges, right? Okay. Oh, I think I have missed a slide, but anyway, Prabhupada also mentions here in the purport that the nature's arrangement is such a way that all of us have enough to eat and sustain. And we see this example in the animal kingdom, right? The ant has its daily meal, and the elephant has its daily meal. And Krishna has made such an arrangement for all of us also. Prabhupada gives this example in the purport of the birds, right? When we throw grains, say a bag of grain is available on the road, the birds will come and then just pick the grains that are necessary for them to eat and then just go away. Whereas a human being, we just take the entire bag away, right? And we basically try to eat for to the full, and then try to keep rest in storage. Basically this hoarding mentality, right? And this is collecting more than what is actually necessary for us. And we have so many people now that there are TV shows on these hoarding disorders that people have. It's just people collect and collect and collect and collect and collect, and they just cannot leave it. They cannot throw it away. So people have to come in and then help them out to take out the unnecessary things that they might have. You have huge TV shows going on in this, but this is the world that we live in, right? And this is how the entire idea of the world is collecting, although they might be unnecessary. And Prabhupada says the entire world is suffering because of this, right? When I first came to the US, there was a Sam's Club next to my university where I went to. So for some reason we went to Sam's Club, and I could see people buying like carts and carts of things. The entire wholesale store in itself was really amazing to me. I had never seen anything like that, and the amount of consumption that we have, and it was clearly over the top, right? But we see that this is the practical world order now of consumption, this atyahara. So what happens if we start collecting more and more and more? What needs to happen if we have to collect more is that we have to over endeavor or unnecessarily endeavor for it. Prabhupada goes to prayasa. So this is Prabhupada's explanation of atyahara. And we can see that atyahara and prayasa are related. Collecting and eating more than necessary also causes prayasa or unnecessary endeavor. Right? If we go beyond what our means are, then we have to slog more for it so that we can collect more. We can eat more, like that. By God's arrangement, anyone in any part of the world can live very peacefully if he has some land and a milk cow. There is no need for a man to move from one place to another to earn a livelihood, for one can produce food grains locally and get milk from cows. This can solve all economic problems. So I think there's a full stop there that I missed. So this is very interrelated, right? Atyahara, prayasa, and actually laulyam also, the sixth thing that Rupa Goswami says in this verse is greed for too many material things. So it's all interrelated. So we are so greedy, so we over endeavor and we over collect, and for us to over collect and over endeavor, for us to over collect, we over endeavor. So these three things go kind of hand in hand. And much of this purport also focuses on these three things: over collecting, over endeavoring, and greeding, over hankering, also being greedy. And here Prabhupada says by God's arrangement, in this world, we have enough grains for all of us, right? This is a problem that we've been trying to solve. World hunger. The idea that we've all agreed, or majority has agreed upon, is we need to grow more and more animals so that world hunger can be solved. But Prabhupada in this purport and many purports in Srimad Bhagavatam talks about this particular economics, right? Prabhupada is saying this can solve all economic problems, that we grow food grains locally and get milk from the cows. And we see this in just the same chapter that Prabhupada was quoting before, is in Yudhishthira Maharaj's kingdom. Everything was so proper. The rains were proper. The crops and the creepers and the grains, everything. It says, I think the Srimad Bhagavatam says, they paid their due quantities to the king, or something to that effect, because the king was ruling with so perfectly, because the king is considered the representative of Krishna, right? Representative of God. So when the king rules perfectly, Mother Earth, she also cooperates. That way, there is no shortage of any food grains. And we see the exact opposite in Srimad Bhagavatam also, in the case of King Vena, where we don't really respect Mother Earth and try to exploit her. Then she hides everything away. And then Prithu Maharaj had to chase her so that she could give enough for the kingdom. So we see that, and this is a big topic also of how we can produce food grains locally and get milk, and then live sufficiently with those resources. And Prabhupada continues, fortunately, man has been given higher intelligence for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, or understanding of God, one's relationship with him, and the ultimate goal of life, love of God. Right, and we've seen these three categorizations before also. This is Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Right, what is our relationship? What is our understanding of God? And what is the process? Abhideya, and what is the ultimate goal? Prayojana. So Prabhupada is introducing that, and he basically equates that to the cultivation of Krishna consciousness in the purport. This is why man has been given higher intelligence. But unfortunately, so-called civilized man, not caring for God realization, utilizes his intelligence to get more than necessary and simply eats to satisfy the tongue. You should see that if you come to Dallas, probably in Houston also this is true. Probably this is true in Texas, where the number of restaurants that you have is incredible. I think Dallas has one of the highest number of restaurants in America. I think when I moved to Dallas a few years back, that was something that was so stark. Like every single mall would have or a shopping complex would have so many different kinds of restaurants to simply satisfy the tongue. And we discussed this a little bit last time also, is that for us to do this, we have to endeavor more, right? For us to satisfy our tongue, we have to really endeavor more, because it's expensive to eat outside. It's not a cheap thing. And when we want to try to eat different things and try to satisfy our tongue, it costs money. And therefore, we have to work more to earn more. And not just that, it also might rack up hospital bills, because if we start eating outside a lot, then it adversely affects our health also. So to pay the hospital bills, again, you might have to work more and over endeavor, right? By God's arrangement, there is sufficient scope for the production of milk and grains for human beings all over the world. But instead of using their higher intelligence to cultivate God consciousness, so-called intelligent men misuse their intelligence to produce many unnecessary and unwanted things. Thus, factories, slaughterhouses, brothels, and liquor shops are opened. Right? So we're trying to satisfy our senses, thinking that will make us happy. Right? So we try to endeavor so much in so many unnecessary things instead of actually using our intelligence to ask those three questions, or for Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Instead, we try to endeavor in so many different ways on unwanted things. But Prabhupada makes the statement again, by God's arrangement, there is sufficient scope for production of milk and grains for human beings all over the world. That's all we need. grains and milk is enough to give us a healthy life that is required for us to perform our devotional service. So Prabhupada continues on prayasa. If people are advised not to collect too many goods, eat too much, or work unnecessarily to possess artificial amenities, they think they're being advised to return to a primitive way of life. How many of us have heard this from our friends when we say, hey, he doesn't really do this, he doesn't really do that, he doesn't really do that, when we're practicing devotional service. This is the general attitude of the world. If we ask people to minimize, the entire world runs on this consumerism, right? The GDP is how much people are buying. This is how the economics is measured in this world. So if people are asked to reduce and say, hey, you really don't need so much, you don't need to collect so much, you don't really need to eat so much, then they don't really like it. Prabhupada says, generally people do not like to accept plain living and high thinking. So he comes back to this point of plain living and high thinking, because or else we'll get into this mode of atyahara and prayasa. If we don't have a simple living or a plain living, we start to over collect, and therefore we start to over endeavor. So this is their unfortunate position. So this is something that gives us a clue of how to work with this world also, right? Instead of directly telling them, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, which they will not like and they will not take our word for it. It's better to give them a taste first of how it feels to practice devotional service. And with that taste, then they might get an impetus to start thinking about their lives in terms of plain living and high thinking. So this is like a preaching thing that Prabhupada is giving us also. So Prabhupada continues, human life is meant for God realization, and the human being is given higher intelligence for this purpose. Those who believe that this higher intelligence is meant to attain a higher state should follow the instructions of the Vedic literatures. Right? By taking such instructions from higher authorities, one can actually become situated in perfect knowledge and give real meaning to life. So this is also a very, very wonderful non-sectarian way that Prabhupada puts this, right? Those who believe that this higher intelligence is meant to attain a higher state, right? All of us agree that human beings have a higher intelligence, but those who believe that that intelligence should be used to attain a higher state than just satisfying our senses should follow the instructions of the Vedic literatures. And how should we do that? Prabhupada quotes this very, very famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. I think this is one of the most fundamental verses that Prabhupada uses many times, right? Dharmasya hyapavargasya nartorthayopakalpate nartasya dharmaikantasya kamo labhaya hi spritaha. All occupational engagements, dharma, are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service, dharma, should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. So this is basically why we have to work, or why we have to act in this world, right? Dharma here, Prabhupada translates it as occupational engagements. All our engagements are meant for ultimate liberation, not to bind us, right? So therefore, it should never be performed for material gain. If it is performed for material gain, it never liberates us, it binds us. So furthermore, one who is engaged in ultimate occupational service, dharma, should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. So if we are acting for that purpose, then it is not good for us to use material gain for sense gratification. Instead, you should use your material gain for the satisfaction of Krishna. And this is a famous varga, right? This is, the word is dharmasya hyapavargasya. Apavarga here is translated as liberation. Pavarga means it's this material world, and this is Sanskrit. So every ka ga ga na, so that's called the ka varga, or the set of alphabets that starts with ka, and this is the pa varga. It's pa ba ba ma. So a is added in front of pa varga, So it becomes apavarga, meaning it's the opposite of pavarga. So apavarga means it is beyond the material world. So Prabhupada gives very, very nice explanation to these five different alphabets and how they correlate to this material world, right? So the first word, Prabhupada says, this pa comes from the word parishram, or it's a lot of work, which is basically what we've been discussing. The theme here is prayasa, right? Over endeavoring. So what happens is, this is basically what we try to do in this world, is we try to endeavor so that we think we can be happy. We try to do so many different things and thinking the result of that is going to give us happiness, right? But unfortunately, it results in the second alphabet, pa, which refers to the word pena. Pena, Prabhupada says, is like the frothing that in the mouth of a horse. So when a horse is so overworked that it starts to froth at its mouth, right? It's so tired that it's frothing at its mouth. And this is very commonly observed in the horses. So Prabhupada says like that, because we work so hard, parishram, and then we start frothing at the mouth like the horses. We become so tired as a result of it. And then bha is bandha. Because of this work, we get bound in this material world. And what happens? Because we get something as a result of our endeavor, we have this fearfulness that it will be taken away. And ultimately, we have the fear of dying, right? Bhiti. This is the bha. And ma means mrityu. Ultimately, it results in our death when we are trying to endeavor like this. This is pavarga, right? So, and therefore, the verse says, dharmasya hyapavargasya, that these occupational duties should actually be for liberating us from this pavarga. And this apavarga is used so many times in the Bhagavatam, right? You have this famous verse also, satam prasanga mama virya samvidau bhavanti hritkarna rasayana katha tajjoshanadash apavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. This is Kapila Dev in his instructions to his mother Devahuti. He says about how we should practice devotional service, right? He says, satam prasangam mama virya samvidau, that in the association of pure devotees, we should have the discussion of the pastimes and activities of Krishna. Bhavanti hrit karna rasayana katha. And how are these activities? These are very, very pleasing and satisfying to the ear, hrit, and karna, to the heart. Hrit is heart and karna is ear. And tajjoshanat ash apavarga vartmani. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced in the path of liberation. Right? And how does this gradual thing happen? Shraddha, Ratir, Bhaktir, Anukramishati. We've seen this. These are the 9 stages of bhakti that starts with Adav Shraddha, and then go all the way till Prema. So this is very, very famous verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the second chapter. Basically, the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam is the questions that the sages ask, right? In Naimisharanya, Shaunak Rishi and his associates are there, and Suta Goswami enters and they ask him these questions, the 6 questions that they ask. And in the second chapter and probably the middle of the third chapter, Suta Goswami gives them the answers to all these questions that they had asked. And the second chapter, the Acharyas quote so many times, so many verses from the second chapter are quoted. I've seen devotees memorize this entire chapter also. That it's so important, the verses that Suta Goswami recites in this chapter. So Prabhupada continues on dharma itself. I think we should probably stop with this. There is still Prajalpa, and that Prabhupada discusses as a part of his purport, but probably we'll stop with this. We are already at 40 minutes or something. So Prabhupada continues. The first step in human civilization consists of occupational engagements performed according to the scriptural injunctions. This is also Varnashram, right? This is occupational engagements according to scriptural injunctions. All of us have our natures that are born out of guna and karma, right? Chatur varnam maya shishtam guna karma vibhagasha, Krishna says. So this is the first step in human civilization. If we act according to the platform of varnashram, that is basic human civilization, Prabhupada says. The higher intelligence of a human being should be trained to understand basic dharma. So this is in continuation. This is in context with dharmasya hyapavargasya verse, right? In human society, there are various religious concepts characterized as Hindu, Christian, Hebrew, Mohammedan, Buddhist, and so on. For without religion, human society is no better than the animal society. So we can have an entire conversation on dharma itself, right? Because this dharma is applicable only to us human beings. Because dharma, the root word comes from the word rita, right? Rita means the order of the world, or what is the right thing to do. We have this very clear order in the world that we live in, right? We can predict when the sun rises, we can predict when the sun sets, we can predict when there would be an eclipse, we have the seasons that come in order. So everything in this entire world has a particular role to play within this order. The only thing is, us as human beings, we have the capacity to have a little bit of freedom. So we have this free will to act according to how we want to, right? The animals don't have this. They are instinctive by nature. So therefore, the question of dharma, or this religious duty or occupational engagements, arise only for human beings. It is not for everybody that this dharma arises. That's why it is stressed so much for us as human beings, that to follow dharma. Krishna basically mentions two verses twice in the Gita, right? One is Manmana Bhava Madbhakto in the 9th chapter and the 18th chapter. And Krishna mentions one other verse almost verbatim. I think in the 3rd chapter and also in the 18th chapter. He says, perform your duty, even though it may be faulty, than performing somebody else's duty, even though you might think you're doing it perfectly. So, so it is very important that we perform our occupational engagements. And of course, when we advance in the path of bhakti, then we can try to do different things. Prabhupada says that a Kshatriya can perform the work of a Brahmana, Brahmana can perform the work of a Kshatriya, and so on. But that is at a very, very advanced stage in our progress of bhakti. So Prabhupada continues. As stated above, dharmasya hyapavargasya nartor tayopakalpate. Religion is meant for attaining emancipation. Emancipation means liberation, freedom, right? Not for getting bread. So the entire occupational duty that we have, that we perform, is so that we can get liberated, not so that we can satisfy our basic needs. Sometimes human society manufactures a system of so-called religion aimed at material advancement, but that is far from the purpose of true dharma. Religion entails understanding the laws of God, because the proper execution of these laws ultimately leads one out of material entanglement. That is the true purpose of religion. Unfortunately, people accept religion for material prosperity because of atyahara, or an excessive desire for such prosperity. And we've seen this. I'll do this so that I can get this. I'll do this activity so that I can get this for myself, right? Because of this excessive desire that we have. True religion, however, instructs people to be satisfied with the bare necessities of life while cultivating Krishna consciousness. Even though we require economic development, true religion allows it only for supplying the bare necessities of material existence. Jivasya tattva jignasa. This is the next verse from Dharmasya Hyapavargasya, right? Sutta Goswami continues. This is I think what that was 1-9. I think this is 1-10. Sutta Goswami says, life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only for a healthy life or self-preservation, since human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing should be the goal of one's work. Nothing else should be the goal of one's work, right? And this is repeated again and again. Atato Brahma Jignasa, that as human beings, our main occupation is to inquire about the Supreme. The real purpose of life is to inquire about the absolute truth. If our endeavor, prayasa, is not to inquire about the absolute truth, we'll simply increase our endeavor to satisfy our artificial needs. A spiritual aspirant should avoid mundane endeavor. So we'll stop here for today. And if there are any questions or comments, we can take, and probably from the next class we can start from Prajalpa. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Very nice explanation that you have given on verse 2 today. Atyahar, Prayas, endeavor, everything. Such a nice explanation that you have enlightened Prabhupada's purport by giving some practical examples, which is so nice, Prabhuji. So, here I will request Mataji, please take questions from the devotees or any comments or reflections.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for a very, very nice and deep explanation you did. And it's an amazing class. Whenever you take the NOI sessions, it's really, really, we are so fortunate. First Tuesday we have taken an association with His Holiness Sanmat Swami Maharaj, and the second week is yours. So the NOI session is going wonderful. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for everything. I request to everyone, if you have any question, any realization, please raise your hand and feel free to ask to Prabhuji. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, would you like to say a few words on what we've said so far?
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
So shall we take question answer session, Prabhuji?
Yes.
Thank you. So I request to everyone, if you have any questions, any realization, please raise your hand and feel free to ask to Prabhuji. Nika, unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the nice class and explanation on Prayas, Atyahar, and Dharma. Prabhuji, I have a couple of questions. My first one is that, like you said, for Atyahar, that we're not supposed to gather more than necessary, like for the basic needs that we have. So, bro, like we have like the tendency, especially things that we really like to possess, like our favorite food or favorite type. So, Prabhuji, how should we retain the one, like our mind is like, go for it, but then we're like, no, but then it still makes us, we just give up and like anyways go.
Your voice broke a little bit in the middle, but if I understand right, it's a question that we have a few things that we really like, but although if we don't want to do it, the mind says do it. Is that the crux of what you asked?
Yes, Prabhu, and I will continuing that the mind, like we tell our mind to stop, but at the end, like especially me, I just give up and then I just go towards what I want because it's like too hard then.
Yeah. I mean, what comes to my mind is this question that Arjun asks also to Krishna in the Gita, right? Krishna, I really know I should not do this, but somehow I'm forced to do this. And then the answer that Krishna gives is, it is because of lust only, Arjuna, that we're doing it. Lust means something, some intense desire to get satisfied, right? I might really like a gulab jamun and I really want to have it. I cannot be without having the gulab jamun. That's basically the point where it's very lusty. And Krishna gives a very nice sequence where we can get to this point, right? Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangas teshu upajayate sangat sanjayate kama krodho vijayate and krodhat bhavati sammoha. This is so it all starts with our contemplation. right? Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa. When we start contemplating our senses on the object of the senses, it's slowly, when we keep contemplating more and more on it, we start getting attached to it. And then this attachment turns into lust. And at that point, it's very hard to come back. Krishna says, when we are at the point where attachment turns into lust, we have to have it. We cannot be without having it. That's basically what lust is, right? So the idea is to, two things we could do to cut ourselves at the point of contemplation, right? Hey, I've done this before. I really shouldn't do this, but I know what the consequence of it is if I try to do this. So we use our intelligence right at the point of contemplation and then say, sorry, I shouldn't contemplate more on this. That's one way to avoid it. Another way to avoid it is to substitute with a higher taste. That way we're not very attracted to the things that we should not really do. This is also Krishna's advice to Arjuna, right? Raso vargyam rasopyase, that you substitute something that's of a lower taste to something that's a higher taste. Then the lower taste automatically goes away.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you very much. Bro, like you said, like pa varga, like pa ma, like you said different words that Prabhupada put, like prayas and all those words. So Prabhupada, like for ka varga and all the other vargas, did Prabhupada say anything?
I have not seen or heard anything of the other vargas. Probably Harilila Prabhu or Guru Maharaj can answer. I don't know. I'm not really seen it. Yeah.
Okay, Prabhu. I have two more. Prabhuji, in prayas, you explained that over endeavoring is not good. Like we shouldn't over endeavor something like only till we need. But then on the other hand, I've also heard that nothing is impossible. Like I've heard impossible is I am possible. So it's like everything is possible. But isn't that over endeavoring? Like isn't that classified in the same thing?
Yeah, so initially from the first point of endeavor, we think everything is possible, right? I'm trying to do it so that I think it is possible. But when we do it enough times and see that we're not getting the result that we want, we should understand that Krishna's hand is there in that, and say we have to say that, okay, I've tried my best to get this, but I'm not really getting it. So I should stop endeavoring on that front. Right? I've heard Maharaj say that 6 times you try, and if you're not able to do it, give your full heart and try for 6 times. And if you're not able to do it, then understand that Krishna doesn't really want us to do it.
Okay, Prabhuji. And my last is, Prabhuji, why did Krishna, like this is not like really I wanted this, but like wanted to ask it, but like you said that there's a lot of religions, and we know because the religions, especially different ones, when there's a lot of arguments between that this one's higher, this one's lower, we should do better. So then there's a lot of wars and arguments that create with all the different religions. So is there any we can do, like how to prevent that? Like we can't like really it, but anything like when that happens right in front of us, can we like ask, say, like give our something to stop it?
Yeah, this is actually a big topic. Rupa Goswami is going to discuss this, I think, in text 5. Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyate. He's going to classify devotees in 3 different categories. One is the neophyte devotee, the devotee in the middle stage, and the devotee in the highest stage, the Uttama Adhikari, Madhyam Adhikari, and Kanishta Adhikari. So all these quarrels and fights in religions happen because of the Kanishta mentality that we have. So we can discuss more of that when we get to that verse. And we see that in Maharaj's book, it's called the Tava Pache Pache. he gives an example of the Kanishta Adhikaris, where we say there is only one God, Jehovah. There is only one book in which you can know God, which is the Bible, and there is only one prophet through whom you can know God, which is Jesus, right? There is another set of devotees who say, there is only one God, Allah. There is only one book, the Quran. And there is only one prophet, the Muhammad, through which you can know the book. There might be another set of devotees saying, there is only one God, and his name is Krishna. There is only one book, the Gita, through which you can know God, and there is only one prophet or one teacher, Prabhupada, that you can know this book. Right? This is the very narrow-minded view of a Kanishta Adhikari. He thinks it's him and Krishna. Nobody else is greater than him. So, because of this mentality, is why we have quarrels among other religions and things like that. So, when we discuss that text, you can probably bring it up if you still don't get your answer.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the class and answering all my questions, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. If anybody have any question, please raise your hand and feel free to ask to Prabhuji. Debol Hare Krishna. Okay. So, Prabhuji, I thank everybody for today's session. So there is no more hand raise. If you allow, shall we close our call here? Or if you want to share something, please, Prabhuji, go ahead.
No, I think we can close the call. Thank you all so much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His great Nath Das Prabhuji ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Vancha kalptarubhasya kapasin he vichapatitanam pavan Vaishnav की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, हिज ग्रेट श्रीनाथ कृष्ण दास प्रभु जी की जय, सभी भक्तों की जय. हरि हरि बोल, हरे कृष्णा. See you. Hare Bol, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, once again. Hare Bol.